NBA insider Shams Charania is reporting that the Philadelphia 76ers are indeed interested, shocker of shockers, in pursuing a transaction that would send James Harden and his bouncy ball over to Philadelphia, right? Send him outbound of Houston and inbound to Philly. So this nugget, like a pinball, is bouncing around the pinball machine, bouncing around the echo chamber, and it has come to our attention. So I would like to revisit, for the purposes of this Maller monologue, the possibility of a prodigious NBA trade. So let us discuss, let's adjust the odds. What are the odds? Here's the question. What are the odds the Rockets trade James Harden? We will update the odds. The Maller line at the radio sports book. You know what it is? Plus 150. Now, that implies a 40% chance that James Harden is hasta la vista from Texas, arrivederci to the Rockets, and is on the first train out of town. James Harden's tenure in Houston is obviously at a crossroads. It's at a fork-in-the-road situation. It's obvious there. Anyone who's paying attention, you open your eyes, listen, open your eardrums. You don't have to be Woj or Shams or one of these guys to see the skywriting, which is as clear as day on a bright blue sunshiny day. Right there, you're laying on the beach, and there it is, right there. So Harden rules the roost with the Rockets. He has for many, many years. He's also had carte blanche. He's had a blank check to do whatever the hell he wants on the court. He plays a very unaesthetically pleasing style of basketball where most of his impact plays involve drawing fouls, which isn't all that sexy, but the production is sexy during the regular season. Harden's flaw has been the inability to get other players around him to elevate their performance, especially in big games. And they have attempted to mold the Rockets around him in different vintages, right? Different vintages, and it's really been on display the last 5 years or so. Houston has cycled through Chris Paul, big trade with the Clippers. They made a deal with Chris Paul before last season, to get Russell Westbrook. And it's been a round-robin situation, and they haven't been able to find the perfect Robin for Batman, or in this case, Beardman. And those guys haven't worked. It's been an oil and water situation. It's one miscalculation and blunder after the next. The guy that made those moves is no longer there. He's now in Philadelphia. More on him in a minute. So this is an opportunity to do some lymphatic breathing if you're Houston. As Aaron Rodgers would say, relax. Take a step back. All right, do your breathing exercises. You step back, take a deep breath, allow all of your muscles there, and your mind to get all the oxygen it needs. And then figure out what you're going to do. Now, secondly, my theory is, and it has not changed, my theory is that James Harden's days are numbered. There's a doomsday clock, if you think this would be a doomsday scenario for the Rockets, and he's going to be gone. Why? All right, this is very simple. All right, when you have a regime change, whether it be for a government, whether it be in sports, when a regime is overthrown, like Daryl Morey's reign in the front office, which was over a decade for Houston, when a guy like that is thrown overboard, get out of here, we're done with you. One of the reactions, which is very consistent here, is to then overthrow in the destruction any symbols that represent that front office and that executive. And James Harden forever will be tied to Daryl Morey. He is a monument to Daryl Morey in that era of Rockets basketball. Morey in Philly, he was spewing all of these cliches, going on and on about wanting to keep the band together in Philly, and he liked the roster. It was a bunch of total malarkey. All right. You got to be a rube and a hillbilly to think that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are going to be playing together over the course of next season. Like, the 76ers are not paying Daryl Morey over $10 million a year to sit there and keep the roster they had. That's not going to happen. This is a guy that makes the most trades of anyone in that sport. Documented. No one's made more trades than Daryl Morey over his run. And so both of these guys, Embiid and Simmons, will have one foot out the door. They're going to be dangled. They're the carrot at the end of the stick. We know this to be true. That's the MO of Daryl Morey. I don't need me or some hack NBA insider to tell you. And we also know, if you look at the anecdotal evidence, that Daryl Morey has a bromance with James Harden. We don't know that Harden has the same bromance with Daryl Morey, but he should, because James Harden was not the man in Oklahoma City, and that is the Mona Lisa of trades for the Rockets, that they were able to get James Harden, who was a good player but not a great player in Oklahoma City. That is the signature move. They bring him over, and voila, right? Voila, presto. And Harden becomes this scoring machine and great regular season player. Not a great playoff player. But that single trade made Daryl Morey the envy of executives and has the basketball media slobbering all over him still to this day, surrounded by the amen choir that just sing his praises. Now, final thought. So there are a couple of stumbling blocks here. Well, I certainly believe Harden's name will be floated. It is already being floated. That's why the odds still favor James Harden not being traded. I believe he will be tossed out. He is being tossed out, but I'm still saying that the odds are a little bit better, a wee bit better that he stays in Houston, at least at the start of the year. It's a quick off season. There's a lot of variables here. It's a short off season. It might be next month. We're in November now. The draft's coming up, and then by the end of next month, they'll be back on the court. So there's not a lot of time to play with. Would the Rockets owner want to do business with his former GM? Would the casino mogul want to do business with his old GM? That is a big mountain to climb. If the bounty is big enough, then I say yeah. I'm an every man has his price guy. I believe that to be true. Every person has their price, and no matter what you say you wouldn't do, if the dollar amount is enough, you would do it. All right? Now, Ben Simmons, this guy would be the one that would most likely go because he can't shoot. He's afraid to shoot. He's got the yips. He doesn't want to shoot from outside, and that's been the bread and butter of Daryl Morey. Even if he doesn't have all small guys, he wants guys that can shoot. So a Ben Simmons trade and a package of draft picks, which would not be enough. It would not be enough to get the beard because of contracts, and they have to match up with the salary cap, so they'd have to use some voodoo to make the trade happen. They'd have to put a bunch of filler, a bunch of spam in the trade to make it work. Now, the other wild card is Harden himself, because James Harden has all of the bargaining power. Now, he's got all of it, and it's a players' league. He can throw a wrench into the trade machine. Right? And you say, well, wait a minute here. What's going on? I mean, are the ballets good enough? You know what I'm talking about, guys? Yeah, you boys know what I'm talking about. Are the ballets good enough in Philadelphia? Now, I've been to Philly before. I've been there in years, but when I was in Philly, I'm aware that they had places. I think they still, some of these places have been there for years. Saints and Sinners, cheerleaders, Club Risque, a couple of those places. So will any of those establishments tip the scales in favor of the Delaware Valley? And James Harden has high-end taste buds when it comes to the jiggle joints. He does. I could also see the Clippers trying to get in on this and say, hey, you want Paul George? Contracts will match up a little bit. We'll trade you Paul George, and we have no draft picks, but we'll trade you some sand for Harden. And Harden's an L.A. guy. He's from the L.A. area, so he can come back. And I think he lives in Phoenix in the offseason because he played at Arizona State. But anyway, also have to throw out the Miami Heat as a possibility when you're talking about the James Harden trade game because of South Beach. You'd imagine the Knickerbockers would try to get in on that, but why would the Rockets want anyone on the Knicks? That would make no sense. That would be ridiculous. Now, the one that would be really an FU to Harden, which is got very little chance, Minnesota's got the number one pick in the draft. How about Harden to the Timberwolves for the number one pick and Karl Anthony Towns? Would you make that trade if you were the Timberwolves? Would the Wolves be any better with James Harden? He'd score 35, 40 points a game, and you'd win over an 82-game season. You'd win, what, 20 games? Sounds pretty much like what you got. Sounds very similar to what the Timberwolves already have at this moment. Yes?